For example, at the moment, we are experiencing grosser level of consciousness.
Can you please explain the statement of Nagarjuna, that which has a name does not exist inherently? Or the first sentence of the Mula Madhyamika Karikas, never are any existing things found to originate from themselves, from something else, from both, or from no cause. In other words, I think the idea of dependent arising is very fundamental one to Madhyamika study. And if you could please make a simple explanation of how this concept can be understood, it would be very helpful.
Kumbuluruki Dindis Japanachas, Pejaka, Ayumarbe, the recess name. The any rushing modulus. And Dindis of the coming the Tamasingam to Kaduna. And the Tanashi, Tawashiram Nalia, Ponadama, Kuashitu, and then Kasusheti, and then Tale Choma, Mother, Shena Choma, and you got a Choma, Mother, and you made a Choma, the Sundus, Sedan Digedia, take some time to Galia, and Ume. Tabakolia, and the 10 days issues case from Satayas, and 10 days be a quarter of children in the Korean countries.
Teacher Subatran, and 10 days share of Ketchibores. 10 days and Tavato Beta, Yenda Chito, Tavato Betas, and Riba Mobashara Yoris. Timone. And then they and the data and Tadi teachers and the Bayoris, Tenita, then they and cultural tomato, the Shara Ketchibodo, Shara large butcheries.
I agree with you that dependent rising.
Tenita, that twisted the Nobek Sherobamanda, Randela, Nobatana, Nobasanji, Pejutana, Rode. Momboyores, Tina and Tombo and Nima was and Nibo Deluding and the Rodi Kaki Yoris, and the Shadow Mama, though they were set on Basin Kusma, we run the Kaki Yoris. The Soke, and then Tapina, then take a tap of the country series, Rongi, Jadu, Jela, Tene, and then drop out, drop a chichila. And the 10 days in Goris. Then they is and then the Jichi, then the Juba Mado, the machine Chitella, Juba 2 Aris.
Yes.
That name, Tarode Umaruji Bayoris, Umaruji Baltana and Joseph Tele Chava, Chavayoris, Karasena and Rangi Chashela Tenuba, Rangi Chashela Tenupate, and then take a tent. Then take a tent, the Dico de Tusiatris, the Chema, the Shadow, the Master Chica Tila, and then the Chatayoris.
But sometimes.
Dusi Changers. That then Uman Tangiba. Uman Tangiba, and Tele and Uja Chava. And Tashi Sematumus. And Duje, and Tubatsema Nina Tene, and Tochite Drubaris. Tochite Drupatella, 10 days cigarettes. They shall attend to Chamujeries, and that's Chamujeries. Turis, Tindicheta, Tadiga, and Juja Shima, Tangiba say you are. Woman Tajibe said, they Anne Tony Gum, Anne Registry, Tomba Tamaris, Tasade to Maris, only the Registry, Tomba to the just to begin of Shikosma, Shara, and Tamojiris. Tare Maris, that Dilelane, Ta Nematinite, Ta Rodini Mavane, Tangibe Bat and do Tuya. Anne that they did. They Tombojeva, they done, 아니 랑 차실에 되는 또 봐서 기샤해 봐. 또서 아니 때데 그래 돈이 또 베타스를 있어. 아니 대 배제 돈이 아니 돈이 되는 야 있어. Is that to be on Jide not days, the Suyoris. There is a Jide Senator was Pumanga, and Natin Jide, teachers and Suyoris. The Sopa, G on the Shanayo, Topa, the Maripa, the legislature, not on the legislature, the language. And the round Buya, and Tope on the Payapa, the Tupan Matipa Yomaris, Kanga, Tope Yatare, Tope Tabazaris, the Sutramusha, that takes you up and Mompachoris.
So now, for example, you see the Vivasik and Chittamatra school of thought, you see, considered the Madhyamika, particularly you see, Prasangika Madhyamika view, they consider as a nihilism. So they put a lot of argument, and even some cases, some kind of contamination, right? Sometimes, contamination. Then they say people or those as a scholar who practice Prasangika Madhyamika philosophy, you see, their explanation is the very reason why things are empty, in the nature of empty, is the things are moving, things are changing. And that means, you see, depend on other factor. Therefore, you see, its essential nature is absence of, let's say, independent self-existence. So the Rengshi Tongpa Yinbi, Dumzen Tadu Kora, Dui Duas, Dui Dinji Duas, Dinji Chigi is an Duguaris, Dugu temperature is those that Dui. So Dinji Yavati, Dumzen Lukuri, Tongpa Dua.
So the ultimate reasoning that is put forth to establish that all, in terms of nature, everything that exists is emptiness or has empty nature, is that things, they are produced and they cease to exist dependently, right? So this is the ultimate reason which is used to assert the emptiness of phenomena.
Therefore, you see here, the meaning of emptiness is something like zero. This is zero, anyway is zero, but anyway, without zero, you can't count. Something like that. So you see empty, but at the same time full. So just you see one object, this side is the absence of independent self-existence. So shunya nature. In this side, so because of shunya nature, you see the absence of independent existence. So you see it depends on other causes, other factor. So all the change or all the function happened because of that nature.
That this is the Tombani and the Telambe, Terilla, Jeta, and the Chita, Kozogati, the Tony near Chichitame, the Kozoga Messi, Niari, Niari, Kodina, Gojana, Umantaji, Charo, and the Shag Maris, Charo, Shag Marite, changing the and the Kozogati, near Lavado, and the Chichi to Lava Chogaris, the Lava Choita, Toma, and the Kozogati, and the Dametela Begris.
Now, in terms of establishing
다 디디제이다 다 고자버티다 안에 라지메 파세다 라지메 파세리 텐데 또 가리서 때라 베르세나 아니 가자 다 취지세다 되게 가자 아니 라지치 저바 메디시 아니 그저 라는데 저바 다 라는데 마트데 세나 라는데 마트데 텐데 이베시 진짜 라그레시 저다 다 디스 라그레시 텐데 이다 다 예라 때네 제바고 예라 때네 슈마이나 아니 라시치도 다 요마리스 라시치도 투 마리스 라시치도 투 마리스 때나 무슨 잠들이 또 좀 맞더니 레라 마시나 아니 세네세 악들이 요레스 세네세 투시오고 아니 세네 다시 제마 그래서 무시나요 아니 미도 데가 마다 봐도 아니 세네 다시 가라 소대에 나야 그 세네 데는 이제 못 알아요.
We can take the example of a president. So a president
이제 못 알아요. 근데 이제 아니 근데 간자데 아니 세네 된지 와다 제예라 되는 생각도 아니 제예라 되는 거 세네 된지 그거 알아요. 근데 라티 먹이봐 그 소만에 아니 다 가라는 게 세네 가라는 니네 아니 저저와지나 아니 그 도마 안에 안에 제거는 거 세네 제스무세 나고르데 데라도 와시 데말아 이자 아니 제라 때문에 아니 거 세네 데고요리스 데고요리스
a president exists independence on
아니 신호지 다지 아니 딱 갈수있대로 아니 다진 세마시라 고스마 아니 도제 미도 도베바 따바자시르이시 파타자시르이시 두시르 파타자가 다예시르이시 두시르이시
Thus it said that all
데이터 강가 땡데레 데르스 아니 고치 땡주 마이베 징가예 봐 마이노 디체 똥바 마이베 징가예 봐 마이노 셀라스 데이터 땡데 이상 내가 이렇게 했으나 아니 젤라 때네 잡아고 젤라 때네 드바이다 라이치 기타요 말이지 라이치 마트 똥바이 거리스 데이터 디체 똥바 마이베 징가예 봐 마이노 라이치 똥바 마이베 징가예 요 말이지 두서 나버리스 다 두스지 세르스 데이터 아니 땡데세한테 때티 대바지 와서 그거 안에 타니 지자체 시험이 봐요. 그래서 그 땡데가 또 왔다라 안에 또다 가서 고라봐도 안에 제단을 수나와 안에 들이에 돼요. 그래서
단대로 마담마가서는 그 엄마서는 타니다 잡아지 주지 잡주래서라 매동도 가르에서는 타니다 잡아서 그래서 타니다 가르에서는 랑근고 랑원의 여바데 영다스 랑근고 랑원의 여바데라 영다 랑근고 자니는 메베 때는 메바데 멘다 대니당 차완네 요인의 산다 나한테 나인도 메든 다양데 나나 메든게 메인도 나한테 유마켄나 이다 유마켄 다당랑 와서 난거와 유마켄나 다당랑 와서 난거레데 유마 대위킹 베튼 다당랑 와서 요아레서네 요마르와 어따테나 이 나인도 메든 메인도 고타당랑 와서 메 요마레데 메인도 나한테 요르와 तेना ये मैं ये ना देंगे चलो मैं लाम से रेस ते तानी दांटा ते मैं लाम तो रेस
So as term madhyamika, the meaning of madhyamika is taken as the middle path, which means
तानी दांटा मैं ते लाम ते हिना नंगा करे योरेस ना इन तेने जोंदे इन रंगोन योबान जंबे तेला तेने लेते साग मारेस ते माजादा तेने जोंदे कोराजे की जुंदी छिरे योरेस तो कोरा युओन जी तीतो जितने कोराते जेसोरेस ताजे तो मेban जिनसन लेंडे तो कोंजलो सुबकंगा मेबतांते चेंदालोंडो योरेस तेनी दांट्रावे इन तानी की तोजी इन गेदके शावा करजा शाजिते जुजी हिंती जने तेने मेलामस योरेस
So the main purpose for understanding the Madhyamika
Pena Namashiva Lishitsumbo, Lichitsumbo, Mashalia Yundilla, Lichitsumbo Lesson, Jambi, Logigrava, Logigra, Lichitsumugi, Ida Kadula Tene, Lichitsumo, Yaming Logipaji Ayungarva, Rede, Pigigi, Lichitsumugis, Lavada, Kambata, Mota, Ida, Rene Lichitsumo Revesana, Marava, Marete, the Tunga Tene, Lotubagi, Lichitsumo, Yambe Lotubagi, Taluchi. Tajuji, the Talu the Tataki to do Dalu the Chiva. Tazu Chiva is the Talu the Chiva is to the Talut.
So, as an example of how
just put on and 다 relative 파레 처르와 파레 처르세데 ane todo 되는 샤고를 만두지 ane pena 맞아 파게 단는 바다들 파게래도 파라와 파갈로서 바로 원년별로 열어와 어떤 데려와 파게 등에 되게 서로 원년별로 지기려와 제가 ane 파레 처르세데 편전 되는 요리지만 두지기 라긴은 연한 편전 맞대봐 라긴지연은 편선 맞대봐. 봐. 맞대봐 요거 그거래. 진짜 바로 저번에 바로 들으셔야 돼. 편선 때는 바로 들으셔고 그러는 것도 지기 아니 바로 들어 라긴지에는 뜨매기 요리지고 그래서 뜨매지 요리지고 그래서 저도 제 단체 더 나신 게 편선 때는 두고 봐. 때는 두고 봐. 그 때는 두고. 그러나 아니 그러나 추다질 찾아기는 냐다 비바수기 가서 대사겠네 감막이 감막이 쓴다고 내기도 시치고 하러 내 다고 하러 냐다 비바수기 그런 거라 내가 가서 동야기 다니는 다고 하러 로투바게 따루디 가서 동야기 다니는 다고 하러 냐다 비바수기 내기 다니는 다고 하러 그래서 따나지기 그런 줄은 내기 대체기 하러 말한지기 또이 다니는 따나지기 또이 대체기 하러 니디 하러 왔다 여러 들리지만 또 지기 아니 그래서 로투비 왔다시야 따루디 냐다 비바수지 말해 냐다 비바수지 내기 나발 따고 하러 맞아 또이 다니는 따고 하러 맞아 봐 또이 다니는 따고 하러 얘네 맞아 또이 다니는 따나지기 또이 대체기 하러 냐다 비바수기 내기 아니 다니는 따나지기 내기 대체기 하러 든디디 하러 그러 대단해만 또 지기 아니 라는 시간에 요 말해서 또배 와달루지 제가 또박이 왔다지기 제가 또박이 가서 선다고 지입니다 말해서 돼. 또배 가서 선다고 지. 이미 다만 다생나지 봐. 말해.
If we're trying to establish the emptiness of this table, we can somehow establish this object as the object to be refuted by the nature of its phenomena in relation to the five aggregates, how we perceive it. But yet when we talk about the emptiness of being, how do we establish the object of being as the object to be refuted? So many Western philosophers have been very deeply involved with this idea of being, the sensation of being as a...
Generally, we make a distinction between what we call the referent object, the object which is grasped at, and the appearing object, the object which just appears to a state of mind or consciousness.
No, right. No, you. 다 미버 강사가 미니. 그러나 오래. 그러나 미버 강사가 등지로 차잖아. 봐. 강사가 등진다. 그러나 강사가 담에도 싫으니 부디. 니가로 미버 직시.
Now, in the case of the conception of grasping at the self of a person and the wisdom which understands the selflessness of a person, both of them take the same focal object. Right? Both of them take the same, what called the same object, the focal object, the object to which attention is paid to.
다 지기 다 매버 때, 지기 다도 신. 저거 다 디니부디 다도 매버 때다, 다도 예버 때니부디, 미버 강사 때문에 체. 다 강사 덴바 주부디. 진유디.
And now the conception of grasping at a separate person, as the word itself is obvious when we use in English, that it sees the self or the person to exist in and of itself. Right? It grasps at the self of a person in that way. Whereas the wisdom which understands the selflessness of a person, its understanding is just the opposite of that self-grasping attitude. And in the case of the conception of grasping at the self, grasping at the self of a person, now the referent object is the truly existent self of a person, which we call Shenyu.
그러나 신다가 신다더라. 그러나 잠 미다 버리셔. 그러나 자수고 그러나 뒤제 딱 버리셔. 미다 버리셔. 진행 시야도.
Or we can talk about say
그러나 대표는 조직하는 플라워 식사잖아. 메도 미고 메도 찍을 미니. 로직이 메도디 다과 요래서 되네. 지. 로직이 티키지기 찍도 요래스. 봐. 다과 되지 말이스. 로니릭도. 메도 찍을 미니. 로 신다면 저지 니릭도.
If we pay attention to a flower on the table, now we could have two states of mind with different modes of apprehension. So a state of mind in us, we see the flower as existing permanently or lastingly. And another state of mind in us, which thinks that that flower, it disintegrates momentarily. It changes from moment to moment, right? So both these states of mind are focused on the same object, that's the flower, but their modes of apprehension are just different. Because the flower, the state of mind, which understands the flower, not flower disintegrating momentarily, that understands that the flower, there isn't any permanent flower as such.
So similarly,
in the same way, the conception of grasping at the self of a person and wisdom which understands selflessness of a person operate.
But
when we talk about how different objects are, talk about the different objects taken by different states of consciousnesses, then of course we have to talk about the difference that we can see between conceptual states of minds apprehending objects and non-conceptual states of minds apprehending objects.
다시 정말 알려드리지 않으라. 던지 차세한데 던지 세한데 유태단 두배단다 요티 이 짐바든 하도 좀도요 말해서 코든 라버지 마도 다 다지 세한데 가르스는 다지 세긴 단다자는 가지고 투모니게 어느 간다 비치나 그래서 다 투모니게 아메리카 신진다지 이너와 돈이 말아 돈이 말아 지여래 소원은 알지 자득이 여러와 다지 정말이었어 다지 정말 돈다자는 자야 말했어 다기지서 남지 자득이 여러와 다지 정말이었어.
So the concept
주신 능력도 부마 가와서 다들 디바 다 이주는 그 또바탈라 다치에 자교하래 된지에 자교하래 다 빛이 다 집어넣어 버려야지.
But there are many other concepts.
And what is the nature of non-conceptual mind?
Only Shevek Ranshin Karinas.
Tumeji Shiva said, Chetan Tumeji Shiva Laya, and Tumeni Tumeji Shiva Laya, and Matu cigarette, the Tanjul cigarette, Matu de la Giamara, and Tumeji Shiva, Lubachita, not the Tenzin.
So, actually, they are.
Tuba Tumeji Shiva, the Tenzin, Yungumbi, Nabatetochi, Yungubu Nabatetochi, and you didn't know you didn't do you didn't do you did Chevandilo, Mobi Nabatetochi, you did Chenama, Tubanaji, Korompa, and Pine Unikichi marriage. You will be Nava Kalajitan, the time of Utikichi. Pena, dead the Mishi Tumeji Shivarva, dead the Kalashaya, the Mishigi, Tenzin Mishi Yungudosi. That dead palace and the Tenzin Mishi Yungudosi. Karasana in dedicated Nabateto Jukuyunguaramat, dedicated Nabateto Jimeba, Tubanaji. Tubayana palace and I do day I never lot to watch it.
And for example, the So therefore, the non-conceptual thoughts.
Something there is using more Tsomo, Tonkentala, and something it is. So that's something that Tundama, you can more Josichivaris. River. Something in the Carson, using more Tonkentala, and something it is. Della Bena Deva Tsonu, Devatan to me, Tsonu can be Legachin Canteline, Torasa, some June. They tell them the party Marina, Soson Jenkenteline, the Hisegres, the Kin, then a party is a him, but then a Maris, he had the two Legachin yet, Yandaket, two coaches of Mato, Yandaket, Chigi or some June saying it. You could Jabar Soson Jenny or to Toralajan, there's some Jones cigarettes. I hint to try that and the J. de Lamnereva.
About a misconception that's happened in the West about Buddhist teachings a lot. A lot of Westerners think that Buddhism says that thinking is bad because they equate meditation with a lack of thinking.
The thinking means the conceptual thought?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the logic and reasoning and things like that.
And the project then to us but to the Tibetan community shoes.
Danji there is Tobosana Karazuna. Pena Danji Umelam Salara, Takolo Chiki Yabore Salava, Gavati Namji Narva, Chiki the Borsa, Tako Konra Chegarva. They may bate some no Karatangierson. Go Mass Nandi or Mother Tona may Hakona, go tell Gadunga Yongomaris, Matereva. Oh, Koran Utin Yovan Manzina, Yavalamanda, the Gulamanda, Chipachi Yangomaris. Then I Ramon Mebaton Hakona, Titoji, late Anna Sagamaris, Korachi, Lereva, Zana Sagamaris, this on that. Then I got some of the Nagarjuna by you were attending those.
About this conceptual thought.
karma actually means, you see, action. Action, you see, verbal action, physical action with, you see, certain motivation. So now I think it's a simple way that generally, you see, even you see, our day-to-day life, no question, it's a long future, but even day-to-day life is a positive experience and negative experience, you see, due to our previous action and today's action, present action. Now, for example, you see, with negative motivation, such as anger and too much, how to say, greedy or too strong attachment or desire. So with that kind of, you see, strong motivation, that time almost, you see, the person becomes something like, almost like mad. So you see, created certain different kind of verbal action as well as physical action. It immediately creates some kind of atmosphere in the room. So you see, not only let's say getting some different kind of experience or unpleasant experience by oneself, but also you see, other, you see, people who around, you see, that place also, you see, share that, you see, negative experience. On the other hand, you see, sincere motivation such as compassion and genuine love and kindness and altruism, you see, altruistic attitude, you see, through that motivation, you see, creates certain verbal as well as physical action. It creates a positive atmosphere. So that is the, you see, the, what is the concept of cause and effect, law of karma. So now you see, as a Buddhist, we believe now that every action not only creates immediate, how to say, consequences, but also it creates long-term consequences. So that's the general, how to say, general explanation. Then if you go to detail about this karma, then there are a lot of explanations.
Well, I guess the one question which comes up so many times is what makes something good or bad karma? What makes something a negative action or a positive action? How is that established?
Yes, now that is the important thing. That I think, you see, every action which bring oneself to oneself as well as other, is some calmness or some happiness or pleasant, that is positive karma, positive action. Every action, any action which bring us, let's say, temporary as well as long-term, some use negative, some unpleasant experience, that is negative action. So you see, negative and positive, the ultimate demarcation is the result, the pleasure or happiness and pain, unhappiness. So now, if you ask why, you see, the pleasure and happiness is something positive and the other thing is negative, why we call positive negative, then I think then you see it reach our, how to say, the innate.
So that is rooted in our innate experience or feelings.
Just, you see, simply we want happiness, do not want suffering. There is no further reason, according to Buddhism. Now you see, there is feeling of I, and that also there is no special reason, just there. It's a consciousness, just that. You see, that is something Buddhists call nature, natural law. It's nature. You see, particle or matters as a matter, and consciousness as a consciousness. And with consciousness, we call being, I, self. That's nature. Now, with that, now you see,
and with that natural feelings.
Feeling, you see, want happiness, do not want suffering. Now that's the basis.
If someone's actions create happiness for themselves but create suffering,
here you see one thing. There is a negative and positive action. They mainly, you see, depend on motivation. If motivation is sincere, positive, then even you see a certain action appears negative or rough one, in essentially, you see, positive. On the other hand, you see, if your motivation is something, for example, you see some kind of desire or hatred, and try to cheat someone, you see, use certain nice word and very gentle attitude. Now these, the verbal and physical action appears, you see, positive and nice, but essentially bad. So you see the main factor, determining factors are the motivation.
How could you?
Then your question is the previous life and this life and next life. Now that's the Buddhist explanation is as I mentioned just now, you see matters and consciousness. You see both are phenomena which always changing. So that means, that indicates these things must depend on causes. So you see causes there are
we talk about substantial causes and then cooperative causes.
So you see the substantial causes. Now there, if a matter, then the substantial cause must be a matter. The other thing cannot act as a substantial cause of a matter. So similarly, you see consciousness, the substantial cause should be a consciousness. The matter cannot produce or act as a substantial cause for consciousness. And a similar way, the consciousness cannot act as a substantial cause of matter. So these things, two things are separate. So it's a cooperative, what's say?
Conditions.
Right, cooperative,
cooperative conditions. But in the case of cooperative conditions, matter can be a cooperative condition of consciousness and vice versa.
So now you see consciousness, the consciousness at the,
at the time of conception. So that means the consciousness which had conceived in the womb of a mother, so that consciousness should have a substantial cause.
Now here, again you see, we have to make differences or make a distinction between different level of consciousness. Which is some grosser level of consciousness. Usually I think people call it as a consciousness. Then you see deeper level, and a deepest level usually people call semi-conscious and unconscious level. In Buddhist, the word I don't know, whether it's corresponding exactly or not, I don't know. In any way, it's something like this. It's a certain, now for example, at the moment we are experiencing grosser level of consciousness. And we are dreaming. When we are dreaming, you see, we are experiencing another deeper level of consciousness. When you see someone faint completely, you see, even you see, stop breathing, that moment, further deeper consciousness experience, or consciousness or mind. Nowadays, when people dying, they all, you see, let's say, physical function stop. You see, brain function stop. At that moment, you see, the most subtle consciousness or mind experience. So that mind, now the question is, now that mind's, you see, substantial cause is same kind of previous, you see, mind. So that's the Buddhist way of explanation. So without consciousness, the being or sentient being or self which cannot exist. Just mere matter which cannot produce a self. So it's a matter like it's our physical thing and combined with mind. Then we call being, sentient being or self. So that's the explanation.
Some of the non-Buddhist systems, such as the Sharvakas and many Western philosophy systems, the belief is that mind is produced by the body. Mind is a phenomenon produced by matter. And I understand the refutation of that in Madhyamika is that causes must accord with the effects, and so that mind must be produced by a preceding moment of mind. And the extension of that being that mind, therefore, is beginningless, because if there is a preceding moment of mind and mind exists in the present, then there must always have been a preceding moment of mind. This is very difficult concept for Westerners to grasp, very different concept of mind. Most Westerners feel that mind is in their body, and when they die, the mind dies. So could you please give something of an explanation of the Buddhist concept of mind?
Generally speaking, as you have
Chikangala so Nyele and then Nyele Sage Nyanela, Sage Guyores. They are Anangavagari Yata, Tumers and Bechigan, the Garis, the Chigios, Data, and the Pebuji to your marriage, the Chigios, they have Hakotis.
Yes.
Didn't you not understand that Pemboji latte? They young Araga and the girls did you me Pemboji latte, which is a rope at the Tera says you have to come to Jirma. Says in the Shemi Kopandi Nonayoris. They are and the Pembolet Tovaris, Pemboji latte de Oris, Pemboji latte de Ori, and the Pembi go to Yena, and the missions of the Telayon, and the Sage Yed the Ganga Dua, Rothholz-Weiner.
So in short, whatever we find in external, that mind is the primary thing.
If the object is the lack of inherent existence of self, then how does non-conceptual mind perceive the emptiness of self?
Okay. Tanda kiri yungobu la so what is ani ranging majuba ina ranging majuba inza ani tomi shebe ani kanjes ranging majuba jingo ares.
What's the object?
tumeji rayeji majuba zibi tumeji shebate ana kahane chibore matuji ya tagazi maji mishi sigin sigin de tumarese. So tomo roje me batubi tuba jivache. Jiva gi juan kahane 타만 그 대지기 노하다기 맞아 대전된 자식이 노하데 세운들라네 좀 지금 뭐를 봐야지.
So the non-conceptual thought.
그 지바티기 정강네 아니 정강가 간장이 유튜브만 수시시나 칠칠칠던 다만 안 되지 노한데 노아 나가 참들라네 무슨 뭐 프로그램한테 다만 있는 유튜브만 무슨 뭐 말이지.
So
difficulty of grasping the concept of beginningless mind. Western ontology always supports the idea that if there is a cause, then there must be the question of what is the cause of the first cause, or what is, if something is dependent arising, then it must have some dependence on something for its original cause. In other words, and I follow the Buddhist logic which leads to beginninglessness, but how would you explain that to someone who says that there's a contradiction between the idea of impermanence and beginninglessness?
Tuma and Gondane Trans, Tipachi Yomari says Marys, they made the same Tuma Mebasaris. In I say, you without the curtain, Jerry Baris, say, Kitty, like in detail, and Kitty chapter Chitanaship, Kitty and Jidu, because it was really and Judo, the Jota at the Payoris, and the Gelataniana and Tabata Boris. Gent daughter Tama White, Taparison, Tussered, Matapa, the Tapang, the Gen daughter Yapamo, this child. They are the Narason, Sonata, and Narason saying it, and say the kitchen my imitate Hako Grenadis, Nara kitchen my killer, say the yellow custom for the general, say it, to Tanaki Hako tell you this. They are sensing the Jerry Boy and I, Tendo Narason, Kitty, Nasha, Tamatsu, there's a Chijila, Josie Lewis. Koita, getting us to Buya, getting Nama to Shimaya, then to get it in Jadoi Gurus, the Nijina, Joseph to sensing the Joji.
Is that idea of continuity shared by any other phenomena?
Yes. Yes. And person.
And then you should speak about some of those to help to enlarge that concept so that people can understand.
Rather difficult. So we can take, for example, our bodies.
Yeah.
And time to. What about taking such abstract?
Yeah, the conceptual formation is caused as an impermanent thing. Is that what you're saying?
Do rang maybe korang ini the demin duchi maybe demin duchi. Do
yes.
Ani duchi demin duchi. So when we have just to gloss that, the three kinds of impermanent phenomena: they're form, and then consciousness, and then what we call non-associated compositional factors, and that is that has a vast collection of things in it. You know, for example, time and composed phenomenon. Yeah. Those who don't correctly understand.
What are considered the permanent phenomena in Prasangika view?
Yeah. Thank you.
In fact, there are many.
Pena nature teaching teaches and nature great Marisana. Teaches and Tanda Charoni did the naked Charoni America Charoni no Yajerwa, and then Kubena Chala to the Yajerwa, and the Chalo to Makawachu, the Kawasha and the Chala Ketcha to the Kawasha and the Tanda Deuce Shaya and the Chalo Shagris on this.
Can you says that?
Shagduva, and Tanda Lord Shadavat Duge.
Tanda
Lord Sabu Shagduva, Shate, and the Chalo Terevese, that is Chalo, the inner Chalo, the magic agenda, Kinatan and Duro, Kitana Charot, and the Tenu Shadi Yoruba. Chalo, the inner and Nipura, there is the Omerite, simple.
Actually,
and the Tenu Narasu, the day teacher, the Chara America part of Senator Narasu, the day Yamanu, Shagris. Yeah, what they didn't, they have it in Gino. Charati Shavitis and the day of Yomaris, Yomari Yaman Shadioris, Shadi stationaries, Tabaris. You take a Topalisha and Nomaris, 또발라 샤데 노아지레스.
So there are as many permanent things as there are impermanent things, because each object, for example, if we think of the table, its emptiness is permanent. And everything has this generic image too.
That's very helpful.
Step into just.
Tibet